Good. Go ahead and film. Okay. Hello, Ace family. I'm here to talk to you today about our valve section, our valve planogram, so that we can help customers the best way possible and make sure that you know all the accurate information. So I'm just going to start at the top and start going over everything that you need to know. So first thing is on top, there's a lot of different handles that can be replacement handles that could fit for a customer's valve. That comes in handy when the valve worked just fine, but somebody hit the handle with a lawnmower or it just snapped off. So that can help save them some money. And usually it's best if they bring in their old one. That way we can match it up and get the right part attached to it. We do have on top a couple other specialty tools. Right here we have a self-piercing valve. So if a customer has their water line running and say they're adding a line to a refrigerator, they can tee off the line with this valve and not have to actually cut the line and do a tee. It just twists down and pierces it to let a little bit of water through, so that can come in handy. We've got another one of these in the brass fittings rack. We've got a few Silcock keys and stem keys that can come in handy for some applications, just knowing about those tools that are there. And then we do have the wall hydrants that customers have when the spigot on the side of your house that's in there. There's replacement parts available for those too, just depending on the brand the customer has. Woodford's a very popular one and something that Ace carries, and of course we can usually order the rest of them. Just a few more packages that I'm going to grab here. One of these is a vacuum breaker for a hose, and this lets water into a garden hose. So if you're leaving something attached and want it to drain, this would be the ticket for it. That's especially nice when it freezes, because you don't want ice in your garden hose, because it makes it a pain in the butt to unthaw and move if you have to do anything with it. This other device right here, it's a hose bib lock. So if you're concerned about someone getting water where they shouldn't and you just want to make sure your spigot's locked up, this will prevent anyone from getting water off of the spigot. So just good to keep in mind. With actually starting with the valve section, I'm going to try to choose the biggest one just to kind of show you a demonstration. So on the top shelf we have PVC ball valves, and again I'm going to grab the bigger one here. A ball valve works by there's two different types in the PVC. There is a slip-on, so it won't have any threads at all. It's meant to be glued on with PVC pipe and used in PVC pipe. But in this little casing here in the center, there is a ball in there that's hollow on one side. So when you turn it to open it, every time it's open, it will be in line. Whenever the handle is in line with the valve, that means that it is open. And so there you can see right through it, hopefully that's visible. And then when you close it, that ball turns and doesn't prevent any of the water. So that's kind of how that works, and that's the most common type of valve, I think. Besides the slip feature, we also have threads. So each size, whether we're 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch, 1 1/2, 2 inch, if you see the slip, right next to it's going to be threads. If you see the threads, right next to it's going to be slip, just so you know where everything's organized and having that right. So let's see. One more thing I want to mention on this: when we're talking about thread size, we're talking about international pipe thread. So this is going to be compatible with your just standard threaded fittings, whether it's galvanized brass or plastic. So these are going to be standard threads for the most part, and we'll put that back right where we got it and keep moving on. So PVC up top, right here, see these tan valves, same deal. They are C PVC, So just used with a different type of plastic pipe, different type of tubing. And then we get into some of the gate valves here. So the first, so when you have a brass fitting and it doesn't have any threads, that means it's meant to be soldered on with a torch and solder. It's called a sweat fitting, and that's something that that usually a plumber's going to do. There's not a lot of folks anymore that actually know how to solder, but anytime it's flat like that, that's what you're going to have. I'm going to try to pick out a big one here to kind of show you. So these are gate valves and stop and waste valves, and they work very similarly, where it's like a drop down, I want to say like a guillotine, but that's a little morbid maybe. But when you turn the handle, it goes up and down to actually physically stop the water, as opposed to the ball valve where it's a hollow ball that turns. So just so you know the mechanisms behind it. Usually if a customer has a preference, they're gonna let you know, and we just have to make sure to look for the right type. So some of these valves, the stop and waste valves, they might have a little cap on the side of them, and I got one that is that's two on there that I can't peel off. But this cap is used for a couple of things. One of them is, see, I got this pulled apart. It can actually drain a line so that so you can evacuate water maybe if it's going to freeze. The other thing is sometimes it works to hook up a swamp cooler line. Usually that's an exterior faucet application, and customers would like that. So it's a good ask to see, you know, what all the uses are they're putting on the valve for, because there's a lot of options, and that's most of plumbing, is just knowing all your options. We've got similar gate valves, stop and waste, even with the PEX fittings too, where you push on and you're good to go, and even some with that other drain fitting or swamp cooler connection, so that you can have that for the customer. On to the next one. Most of these are just gate valves in the different sizes. Again, more push fittings. And then we get into some of the ball valves here on the side. And again, ball valve is the most common type of fitting, type of valve that we'll sell. The ball valve is super popular, and I'm going to get a big one just to show you. It works the exact same as the PVC, where if you turn it, and they're always a little bit stiff in the store, so sometimes the customer will grab it and go, oh my goodness, that was kind of difficult. The more you use them, the more they loosen up, so don't let that deter anyone. They do get easier over time. They don't get harder. So you can see the ball right here, and then as we turn it, so that again the handle is in line, that means it's open and you can see completely through it, and that lets the water through. They're available in all different sizes that we have here. Moving on, we've got some more PEX push fitting valves that are a ball valve style, going down to 1/4 inch, just to compare, just a little guy, and then the 1/2 inch sizes and 3/4 inch sizes and 1 inch tend to be kind of the most popular. So we usually have the most depth on our inventory there. When we go on, we've got more push fittings. We also, with the PEX, we have the crimp-on fittings. So if a customer actually does have the tool for it, they can do the crimp rings, and they're a little bit cheaper than the push fittings, just like the other PEX supplies is. So as we move on, we've got the 1 inch PEX fittings, and then we've got fairly large ball valves, and then gate valves that are bigger, and again, just whatever suits the customer's application. Here we get into some they're ball valves, but they're rated for gas. They have a little bit of a different handle on them, and so if a customer's using it for gas, please use the label. We never want to lie to a customer. If you're not sure, we can always look it up on AceNet. We can always read the label, and by all means grab a team member and make sure to ask the question and just make 100% sure. So a lot of the information may be on the label. We may have to look something up on AceNet to ensure that stuff's for the fitting works for gas, but we just don't want to be responsible for making a poor recommendation without checking. So these ones are gas. We do have some gas ball valves. There are some that have pipe thread on them. There are some that have some flare fitting thread on them, but generally a customer might bring in a hose or something so we can match it up and make sure it's right for them. So moving on to kind of some of the lower shelves here. We've got some more specialty fittings that I'll show you. So I'm hoping that this works okay on camera here. I'm going to shake this a little bit and you're going to hear a metallic rattle. And this guy is what's called a check valve. And a check valve is special because it only allows water to flow one direction. So on every check valve, there's going to be an arrow. And in this case, the arrow's this way. And there's a few different types of check valves. We have another in the sump pump fittings. That is a spring-loaded check valve. We'll go over that in another video. This one is a swinging gate check valve. So what it does is, if the tips of my fingers are mounted, it's got a gate in it that swings open so water can pass. And then as soon as the water starts to go back the other direction, that flap closes and it won't let water go back the other way. So that's really useful if you're talking like a cattle trough, or if you're talking a sprinkler system, where once the water gets out of your lines in your house, you don't want it to come back in, because the pipe might not be rated for drinking, and you don't want that water back in your system. So might be outside. Anyway, just more of a safety deal. There's all sorts of reasons, but that's a check valve and kind of how that works. Let's see, float valve here. So these float valves are awesome. Our store specifically sells quite a few of them for cattle drinking troughs. And what we do is we grab a stem rod and a ball from our toilet connector section, and that mounts right here, and that puts a ball and a rod on this. So a customer can not only adjust it, but then they don't have to worry about refilling something. Again, you think of like a cattle trough. They come and drink it down, and then when it gets down far enough, this will kick on and fill it back up so that there's always fresh water. So very convenient when paired with some other parts. So that's right here. There's a few different sizes, so you can usually a smaller trough, you need a smaller one of these. Bigger trough, you need more water, so you need a bigger one. So the rest of these are some different types of boiler drain valves, ball valves. They all are basically designed just a hair differently. So some of these kind of have a short elbow on this, and you might find this one behind your dryer or somewhere on your water heater, where you have some male threads and then a garden hose that'll attach onto. And I said, washer and dryer, your washer hoses are going to have garden hose threads on them, so that might be somewhere you'd use that fitting. So there's some shorter stubby ones. There's some others where it might be a little bit longer, something like this guy, and there's the use is determined by the customer. That's going to be up to them to tell you what they need and how they want it. But again, 1/2-inch pipe thread, 3/4-inch garden hose thread, and then we've got them taken care of. This one in particular is a ball valve, just like the rest. If it only turns that 90 degrees, that's what that's going to be. Let's see. Again, kind of the same thing. I don't want to be too monotonous, but just some different shapes. We do have some short and stubby PEX connection. So this particular one's a shark bite. So if you just need to have a little garden spigot for shark bite, and then it's actually got that 90-degree ball valve on it too. Keep in mind that all these short and stubby ones, they are not the hose spigot hydrants you'll see on the side of the house. If it freezes, these are most likely going to freeze and break. These are more where you only have the water going to it during the summer, or they're inside a shop or facility that's not going to freeze. So just something to keep in mind, that just because you have something like this, it's still pretty likely that the water is going to freeze right here. And when water is up against metal, the metal is going to lose every time. The water will expand and break it if it gets cold. So just that's why it's important that I mention that. So some of these are male, some of these are female. Just have to get used to digging around a little bit. Looking at the pictures is certainly a huge help. Just making sure everything's in the right bin. On the bottom, we have a few more things that I'd like to point out. One of them is this is a manifold, and you might say, oh, that kind of looks like a T, and that is essentially what a manifold is. If you have, let's say, a master bathroom where you have cold water coming in one line, it's more efficient to run one bigger line than it is to run multiple smaller lines. So you do one big line, and then you might have your cold water going to a sink, your cold water going to a toilet, and then cold water going to your shower, so that you can save time and money going into this, and it just helps to divert the water a little bit better. So these are manifolds kind of on the bottom here. There's all sorts of different styles. This particular one's for crimp-on PEX. The next thing, kind of for PEX, this can give you a rigid mount, but it's PEX on one side, and then you can cut it like copper, go to something else, whether you want to solder copper on or have a more rigid fitting somewhere. That's what that might be for. This is the same thing, same sort of style, just with a plate on it, so there's more places to fasten. And then we do have some supported elbows that act like a mount too for PEX pipe, so that it goes in there and it can be a little bit cleaner for the finish work, and you know exactly where the wire is. So this item right here is a pressure regulator. So there are, if your well's too high, if you're right next to a city pumping station, your PSI could exceed what some of your fittings are rated for, and just have too much pressure and actually blow something up, and water inside is not a good thing. So this regulates the pressure to make sure, just like on a camper, some campgrounds you go to, the pressure is too high for a camper and it can ruin fittings. Good to have a pressure regulator there. Usually a customer's going to ask if they know this is an issue. It's not necessarily certain common, but something we have to get the customer taken care of nonetheless. The last thing here kind of ties in to what we have on top. This is a Woodford rebuild kit for the wall hydrants that you usually hook up your garden hose to, just to make sure we have all the parts and pieces. Sometimes those get mounted in a foundation where they're difficult to take apart, or you have to cut your ceiling and then you have to mud and paint and sheetrock, so it creates a mess. Sometimes that's nice and convenient to have. So that pretty much rounds out all the fittings that we've got here. Please look around, kind of get used to it, and let us know if you have any questions.